In the early 2000s, Mini Truckin went mainstream with TV shows and toys around the world. Innovative fabrication and going as big as possible would become the name of the game. Mini truckers would embrace the built not bought lifestyle and drag and destroy. But soon, mini truckers would reach a level of quality only seen in street rods.
So the first couple episodes of this, mini truck history, we kind of showed the roots, where it came from. Vans, Volkswagen, lowrider, that was a big influence on the styling in the 70s and the 80s. The 90s kind of really started to come into its own with mini trucks.
Absolutely. I really think that, like you just said, that in the 70s, it was kind of influenced by the Vans.
Mm-hmm.
The 80s, it was kind of influenced by just what was happening, the fashion.
Yeah.
What was like the style was kind of big.
The 80s style, the 90s style of we call it the Zach Morris, Miami Vice,
Right.
So you had your wild colors, you had your, the whole Oakley shades, the beach, all that
Right.
kind of stuff. So it was still kind of finding its own niche.
Right.
And I think it really started to become what we consider mini trucks,
Right.
or a mini truck scene in the late 90s, early 2000s.
It was when mini trucks, there were no rules.
Yeah.
This was hey guys, we're doing this. Here's our influences. We're going to show off what we do, and they started to set the trends. It wasn't the trends telling them what to do.
They weren't borrowing from
Right.
another trend or another genre. And when they still did on some things, but that kind of then became its own, style in itself. And,
Right.
And of course we joke about the mini trucker uniform, if the hot rod guys have, their short shorts and Hawaiian shirts, well, Dickie shorts, pulled up socks, all stars,
Backwards
backwards hat, some
Yep.
piercing, tattoos with your club,
Right.
on your forearm, like that. That started to become the style and the fashion of specifically mini trucks.
Well, and at that time, that's when you could actually see somebody just walking down the street and say, that guy's a mini trucker.
Yeah.
You
You could recognize somebody if you're at the
you
gas
could just-
station,
yeah.
even if you're in your daily driver.
Right.
And that became one of the things, too, of mini trucks, because guys were doing such heavy fabrication. A lot of them were doing it themselves
Yes.
in their garage. It became a point of pride of built, not bought.
Right.
Do it yourself. If you weren't welding or grinding on your frame or working on your truck in some fashion, you were kind of outcast from the mini truck scene, because it was
Exactly.
like, hey, no, you're just throwing some money at this, or you're not part of this. Like, you got to do it yourself. And so a lot of guys would have then a daily driver.
Yeah.
Rather than cruising around and driving their custom truck every day.
Right.
They'd have another truck or a little, Honda Civic or something to get around while they worked on their truck.
Well, I think at that time too, what was really neat is that this was the time that kind of kits went away. Like, you didn't really just have your like bolt-on lowering kit. I mean, some people made,
You
things.
did, but people weren't
Right.
doing that.
Right.
Yeah.
But what I liked about it was, especially too, being of that age at the time, being in my 20s at that time,
Mm-hmm.
and growing up where people are like, you need to be in the computer age. You need to stop working with your hands. To be a craftsman or to be somebody that did something with metal, that was like looked down upon. Like,
Mm-hmm.
people looked at you like you were this kind of lower level person that was just like a worker type deal. Where our schools were taught, like, you need to grow up and be like a Bill Gates kind of guy. And look, none of us wanted to be that.
Mm-hmm.
We all wanted to get our hands dirty. We all wanted to show our expressions. We wanted to show what our abilities were. So that's where I think mini trucks were perfect at the time, because again, too, mini trucks were cheap then.
Well, and that's, the OEMs were still making them, Ford Ranger, Chevrolet S10, which, the Chevy S10 kind of became known as a belly button in the mini truck world, because everybody had one.
That's right.
But there was, the Mitsubishi Mighty Max. You had the Toyota Tacoma.
Right.
That was big. And then you could still get, guys were still going to buy the 80s or the 90s Toyota and then just cut them up.
Right.
Completely.
And that's funny that you mentioned that too, because for the first time now, Toyota and Nissan weren't the top mini trucks. Now you had guys like you mentioned, S10s.
Chevy.
Everybody had an S10, because that was just at that time period. It was like, those were the cooler looking ones, or that was the more affordable one.
Yeah. And maybe more available or something like that. But really a lot of the shops, started to pop up. You had some of the shops, but like some of them became really well known and known to also to the celebrities.
Yes.
You know, so you have MIC, you know, that Rob Maggi started, and he had guys like Sean Mahaney, Art Gomez, you know, Jeremy Kaufman, like a lot of guys there doing crazy metal work. You know, I remember hearing stories of Sean Mahaney like, hey, let's chop the roof off of this S10. Like, okay, what do we do? I don't know, just start cutting.
Yeah.
You know, and you could always weld it back together.
Yes.
So
Sean used those words a lot.
Yeah.
Was I can always weld it back together. Yeah.
And then, you know, West Coast Customs, which, you know, is now a huge, you know, global shop, TV shows, all that. Well, and what's funny with Ryan, you know, Freeling House, he's now embraced where he came from.
Yeah.
But, you know, he had a Forerunner that was on the cover of, of Mini Truckin magazine.
Right.
You know, he started out in the mini truck world,
right,
you know, and then now he's, you know, kind of come back to that with and it's kind of cool is he's doing that through like a school, you know, of younger kids, like an academy, I guess, and where they're building mini trucks.
Right.
So, you know, they did a Mazda. They just recently finished Alex Anderson's Tacoma, you know, as a tribute to him. And so he's kind of embracing the, hey, we started out as mini truck guys, then we got Shaq and went crazy and did Pimp My Ride, but you know, this is where we started. And a lot of the shops that we know now, you know, we mentioned this earlier, is got their start in mini trucks, or their guys in the back were mini truck guys, and they're kind of coming into their own now. You know, you got obviously, you know, West Coast Choppers, Jesse James. Well, half of his guys were all mini truck guys, including Alex Anderson, and Ricky Bobby James, and
Jay LaRosa.
Jay LaRosa worked there. Yeah. Well, and Jay had sport truck specialties, you know, at one point. So, and he really honed in on making parts for S10s.
Yes.
And so he had, you know, his S10 came out probably 2001, 2002, maybe?
No, more like 99.
99, okay, earlier than that.
Because I remember I worked at Linex back then, and we sprayed the bed liner. I want to say 98, 99-ish, around there.
And that had, and it had silver with like a set of maroon kind of tribal or burgundy tribal flames.
Ryan at Chaotic Customs.
Yeah. Well, and that's another thing, too. We're talking about the TV shows that are out now. Okay, Texas Metal has Bill Carlton, extensive mini trucker.
Right.
You've got Kindig, mini truck guys.
Throughout
the entire shop almost. All Sever Ties guys, Kev Dog and all those.
Yeah.
You know, Finnegan.
Right.
Roadkill.
Yeah.
All that. Finnegan's Garage.
Yeah.
He's started out as mini trucker. Burnt Taco was his truck. He famously drove it from New York to California to get the job at Mini Truckin, although you maybe have some different...
No.
Finnegan lore.
No. Okay. Finnegan and I, you know, we hung out a lot during this time. And funny story about Finnegan was I had a Nissan pickup that actually got stolen from me.
Yeah.
Okay. And it was gone for 5 or 6 years. And I got a phone call that it was found. And so at the time I had already had another vehicle. Well, Finnegan, of course, was in the middle of building something. Mm-hmm. And I think it was his Tundra, what he was in the middle of building.
Probably, off-road one.
Off-road one, yeah. And he needed a car. So, of course, I had this free hard body that just kind of came back to me. So I'm like, Finnegan, go ahead. You can drive it. Just, if you use it for the magazine, just make sure I can always drive it. Now, the key word was I can always drive it. And
it's never been driven since.
It's never been driven since.
Yeah. And that unfortunately happens with a lot of mini trucks, it seems. They've, you know, get so heavy into the fabrication of it that then it kind of just lingers. And there was a joke for a while of the Mini Truckin magazine under construction cover curse.
Yes.
So
yes, totally.
Yeah.
But on that same strand that you're talking about right now is built, not bought. Let's talk about that, because that was a huge badge of honor for everybody to wear in the mini truck world. Versus
a hot rod world where I have a Boyd car, I have a Chip Foose car, you know, somebody else built it. I just sat there and wrote a check.
Right.
It was way different in the mini truck world.
And the other thing I thought was really funny about that too is, even if, like, let's say, like, people still refer that truck that Finnegan messed up ended up being a cover truck that I named Pepe, and I named it Pepe for a couple different crazy reasons. But the funny thing about it is, today even people still say, "Oh, I saw your truck." Well, it's not my truck. I sold that truck.
No, it's been 3 or 4 people probably, and multiple changes.
And that seems to happen with mini truck guys.
It's still always that guy's truck, even if you bought it, you know. And so there was a certain thing of, the built not bought was, okay, you're not just going and paying a bunch of money and having your truck built, but it was also then buying a finished truck, and, you know, you're not going to be able to claim it as your own. or say that you built it, or it's always going to be so-and-so's truck. And unfortunately, I think that kind of killed the resale value of these trucks, because the joke for a while was, okay, you're going to spend $30,000-$40,000 at the time on a mini truck, and you're going to sell it for 10.
Yeah.
Like, if that was, no, I was going to say, if that, you know, like that was like the threshold. And because a lot of it was, well, that's someone else's truck.
Yeah.
It wasn't desirable to have somebody else's truck.
Right.
But, you know, a lot of the, you know, we talk about in that DIY spirit, most of the parts shops weren't necessarily doing selling bolt-on kits or bolt-on stuff. It was universal kind of fit, maybe, you know, so it's, hey, here's a notch, 4-link, you know, air compressors, you know, you had Viair, you know, Air Zenith came on a little bit later.
Right.
All these guys, where then it was, okay, here's all the stuff that's going to fit or be able to be used on anything.
Right.
You make the rest.
And I like to call this time period the age of fabrication.
Yes.
Because that kind of took over from other similar things that, like, you know, a mini truck from the 80s, it was about paint.
Yeah.
Right.
Paint. Yeah. It was standard if it was, you know, lowered, some wheels, and then what stood out was the paint.
Right? Whereas this era, it was about the fabrication. You would see trucks in complete bare metal, but they would have a crazy, you know, tubular bridge that, you know, was a geometry nightmare. And the funny thing I always looked at this was, because I wasn't very good at math, but the thing I always really thought was really interesting about it is I'd look at these like creations that guys would come up with, and you'd look at the guy in his mini truck uniform and you'd think, dude, did you even pass, you know, geometry in high school? Well, you certainly had to learn something, because look at the amazing fabrication work that you've done with this, you know. And I think that's where a lot of guys sell the mini truck guy short. You know, it's just
the creativity,
and
obviously hands-on fabrication.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, some things might not be as functional. A lot of it might just be like, look what I can do with metal.
And that's the thing. Yeah. For a notch, you know, bridge, you need one or maybe two bars.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's all you need.
Right.
All you're doing is strengthening the frame in the parts that you modify and you cut out.
Right.
You know, maybe you cut out some other stuff. So yeah, you're just strengthening the frame. But, you know, and I remember, you know, extensive. I mean, I wouldn't say they were the first, because there's probably someone else, but I remember them really capitalizing on that, or showing off their skills, where it wasn't super elaborate, but maybe it, you know, intertwined, like the bridge bars intertwined. So you had like kind of figure eight style going through it.
The Medusa tubes.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And, you know, and that obviously then expanded to full tubular chassis, you know, independent rear ends. You know, you're talking, you know, heavy fabrication, like, you know, this is probably the mid 2000s, early 2000s, but like Josh Freeman, who later went on, you know, Gas Monkey Garage. He has his own shop, you know, in Dallas and stuff, but his Toyota, you know, and what's funny is he's pretty tall,
right?
You know, he's not short, you know, but he had a chop top, you know, Toyota. So an older Toyota, you know, early 90s Toyota.
Right.
With
that Nissan
full body drop, like almost to the doors, you know, Nissan, what, 350Z?
Yeah, Nissan 350Z
rear end,
so
independent rear with, you know, tubular stuff like that, obviously, to fit the engine, you know, little bubble in the hood.
Right.
And I mean, he drove that thing everywhere. He railed that thing as low as he, you know, possibly could.
Well, you just brought up another one.
Yeah. The drag and drag and destroy.
Drag and destroy.
Yeah. And that was part of the thing. Well, okay, if you built it yourself, well, go drag it. You need to fix it, you know, part of the frame, you know, weld it back up. And that became, you know, okay, hot rod guys go fast.
Right.
In a straight line.
Right.
You know, same with muscle car guys, you know, drag race, low riders. Okay, you got your hydraulics, you can hop, you can show it off. You know, with a mini truck, unless you're parked, or, you know, you can cruise it low. Well, it became, how low can you go? You know, how low can you drive it? Well, you're not going to get any lower than driving it by dragging the frame.
Right.
You're not going to get any lower than that. But then people started to put titanium blocks, you know, on, or even, you know, trailer hitch, you know, balls and stuff like that, and, you know, dragging bumpers, or
a consumable metal.
Yeah. Versus your frame. Right. Although we know many people that dragged through their frame and things happened. And
it was a badge of honor in the 80s to knock off road turtles.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, all the
you know,
road
that was
docs
a big deal, like, you know, back when I was getting into this stuff. But the funny thing about dragging was, I mean, it was multiple road turtles. I mean, that could be, you could take out a lane if you wanted to, if, you know, so.
Yeah, those are, you go try to collect those and
Right. Yeah. Again,
'em on
badge of
there.
honor. I mean, that was the other thing. It was like, look at, yes, I have this beautiful truck that I created myself and used my own 2 hands to create this creation, but I'm also going to drag the hell out of it because I can.
Yeah.
Right.
and that's the fabrication of it, you know, really was coming into its own. You know, Mini Truckin then kind of blew up and became a little bit more mainstream, you know, especially even though Jesse James would clown on mini trucks, but Monster Garage, you know, those were all mini truck guys that were in the background starting
Yes.
all of that. And it was about fabrication and going as crazy as you could.
Well, I mean, look, Jesse gets a lot of credit for Monster Garage. Obviously, he was the face of the show. Obviously, he was a lot of the creative of it. But really, the guy that ran Monster Garage was Alex Anderson.
Yeah.
And I know if you guys have known Alex's name or have heard of him before.
Alex who?
Yeah, exactly. That I think is one thing that we have to thank Alex for, is that he brought mainstream, or he brought the
and he
mini
brought
truck
the
to
mini
the
truck
mainstream.
guys to that.
Well, no, he tagged on all of us along with us to go after, you know, telling the world about what this is about. And that's kind of what happened too, is you had characters on the show that, you know, Monster Garage, you're like, where's this guy from? Where, you know, and of course all of us are like, oh my God, that's my homie.
Yeah.
And you're
he's
on
on TV.
Yeah. So, you know, that was like kind of like a shining moment for that. And also too, it legitimized a lot of us, you know, a lot of people like, oh, so you build cars. Oh, like on Monster Garage.
Yeah. Not like, oh, an oil change guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, like some grease monkey. Oh, this kind of thing.
And that's, and it you know, there always was a little bit of the high school parking lot cool, you know, where like you were the guy with the cool truck, stuff like that. You know, there's even, you know, an old movie, you know, like in the 90s called Clerks.
Do you sell hubcaps for 72 Pinto hatchback? Oh, Mini Truck Amazing.
Right.
And we're on TV.
Well,
so it was becoming a little bit more of its own, you know, thing and a little bit more mainstream.
Well, think of this. Even, you know, Steve Platt, he built, you know, steel, excuse me.
Yes,
you look at Steel
Flame.
Platt. You look at, you know, Steel Flame, and you
the
know,
Hot Wheels truck.
The Hot Wheels truck. I mean, that was a big badge of honor because most of us growing up played with Hot Wheels.
Yeah, every car person.
Right.
Yeah.
So to see a mini truck version of a Hot Wheel, that was like game changer. Okay, wait a second.
Well, and he worked at
And he
Mattel,
worked at Mattel. Right.
worked at Hot Wheels.
Right. He moonlighted obviously over at Sport Truck Specialties with Jay.
Yeah.
But at the same time too, like his day job was a toy designer for
Mattel.
Mattel.
So it kind of brought it
Yeah.
together and was cool enough, you know, that Mattel and stuff saw that and saw what was going on and made a version of that.
Exactly.
And, what's really cool is that, you know, Steve, you know, had it for a while, sold it to a couple people.
Yeah.
They fixed up here and there, but now within the last year, you know, a friend of ours, Don Garling's bought it back, and he's really put a lot of work into it to get it, you know, repaired some of the paint, repaired some, you know, dents here and there, redid the stereo, like keeping it's still what it is, but just putting it a little bit of his own spin on it. And that's kind of, you know, what we talked about of the whole, you know, built, not bought, and not having someone else's truck. It's now a little bit of, you know, you're 20 years later that, okay, now it's cool to have that truck.
Right.
Like, it's like, oh yeah, that I remember that truck. And now it's resurrecting itself. And that's, we'll get in later of the whole kind of resurrection and nostalgia of the mini truck, you know, scene. But, you know, you still had, you know, tons of guys that were just building crazy things. I mean, one of my favorite trucks, and it's, you know, you talk about crazy fabrication. These guys were like sandrail off-road guys, but, you know, they built a Toyota with a Tacoma front end called Farfaloosin.
Yes.
And it had a Volkswagen engine in it.
Right.
Tilt bed, full tubular chassis. And I remember seeing that at the Forbidden Fantasy show probably a year maybe after it had come out. Like, it was probably it already debuted and stuff. But just remembered staring at it.
You know, that truck to me, again, it just shows the creativity of mini truckers.
Yes.
Because when you're looking at that truck, you would think everything would be your standard Toyota drivetrain, everything else. The thing that got me the first time I saw that truck is when I heard it start up, because I was such a Volkswagen guy when I was younger. I was like, wait, where's the bug at? And I totally like was looking around for it, and the thing's next to me idling, and I'm like, no, there's no, I didn't believe it. And then I thought to myself, why would you do that? Like, but then I thought, well, wait, that makes total sense. You're taking the Volkswagen part of it and turning it into the mini truck thing, which was one and the same anyways 10 years earlier.
No, and those guys crossed over a lot, and this was just obviously the next kind of step of it. But that's what's crazy is, you know, the front of it.
It doesn't. Yeah.
It was the same. It was like a Volkswagen where the motor wasn't there.
Right.
Motor was in the back.
Yeah.
You know, so it was set up like a Volkswagen, and you know, I remember those were like on, just like air cylinders or hydraulics or something. I do know that he could tuck a wheel while driving.
Right.
You know.
So it has to be some type of. You're right, air cylinder, hydraulic. It's been a while since I've seen that truck. I think we did see it though at the reunion show maybe a year or so ago. Was it out there at a Ronnie show?
No, I think it's back east now. I think.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Okay. I could have swore I saw it from across the way, but it's just. But again, too, if you start looking at the detail work that truck has, you know, I mean, everything has been taken apart, everything has been hand fabricated, everything has been changed, but it still resembles that mini truck style.
Yeah.
You know?
No, I mean, the graphics on it, you know, and one of the things too that became, I'd say it was popular in the street rod and hot rod world, but that was because maybe that's what the dash was, where it was a metal dash. So you're just creating off of that. But what became really popular, you know, we talked about chopping the top, you know, dooring or, you know, fully body drop in, cutting the pinch weld off to get as low as you could.
Right.
Suicide doors, front end swaps, but on the inside, you know, a sheet metal dash, a custom sheet metal dash.
Right.
You know, and that's what a lot of this time period was just basically take it down to its bare bones.
Right.
And then cut it up and do whatever you could. Because I think a lot of it was showing off, but, you know, the shows were really keen in on it counted. Body mods is what counted. That's what classified you mild, wild, you know, whatever.
Full custom.
Full custom is the number of body mods, basically.
Right. Yes.
So you got shaved doors, right? You got shaved door, you know, taillights. You got, you know,
it's in threes. So your mild was if you have 3 mods.
Mm-hmm.
If you had 6 mods, you went to wild, and if you were 6 mods plus, then you're full custom.
Yeah.
You know, so that was kind of the early, and a lot of that came from the RG Canning deal.
Mm-hmm.
You know, which comes from, you know, former car shows before then, even back to the Oakland Roadster show. Where those classifications came from. But Mini Truckers also too, they brought up other, you know, awards. They brought up best fabrication, best under construction,
engineering,
best engineering. Yeah. You know, so they kind of had a little bit of their own that they brought in to the scene, and I think that was really important. I think that it was needed to be recognized if you did something unique, and I think that's where Mini Truckers really stood out compared to your other, you know, muscle cars or whatever you want to call them.
Yeah, and that's, you know, the whole under construction thing. You know, you know, they started putting doing under construction issues in Mini Truck magazine,
right?
You know, so because at that time, you know, you had, you know, obviously Mini Truckin had been around for a while, trucking, but they didn't do a whole lot with you know, mini trucks.
Right.
Street Trucks magazine started up in the late '90s and included mini trucks. They had, you know, they went after the more full fabrication, stuff like that. But it became, you know, at a hot rod show or low rod show, you never brought something that wasn't finished.
Right.
You know, at a mini truck show, there was best under construction. You know, there was the magazines that would feature under construction vehicles.
Right.
You know, and that was because you're doing a lot of fabrication, so you wanted to show that off before it got finished.
Well, and I also think that the magazines were important too, because if you really kind of look at it at the time period, Truckin Magazine was a corporate magazine.
It became very OEM heavy.
It was
very, you know,
and
mild.
Well, and it catered also to the guys that were selling kits, that were selling, you know, stuff that you could
some
buy.
Headlights that you could bolt in.
Right.
Yeah.
Where Mini Truckin was not just, hey, this is the latest offerings that people that are in the scene are building. They also got into this show, this lifestyle, what you're listening. I mean, I remember Mike Shartzis would always say, it was either Mike or maybe Courtney. I don't. You guys are going to call me out on this one, but there was always, what's in the CD player? Like, what are you listening to music wise? What are you buying clothing wise? What's the trend? I mean, so it almost was like a roadmap to lifestyle.
No, and that's it. Yeah, they even, you know, especially Mini Truck Magazine and other places called it the life, you know, the lifestyle. The, you know, it was kind of all encompassing, you know, of that. And I think a lot of it, especially in the mid 2000s, you know, kind of was bringing in some other cultures, like the whole skate culture, you know, obviously that a lot of that from the 90s and stuff still, but like the bro culture.
Yes.
You know, so your metal militia, your, dirt bike kind of guys. And that's a lot of the flipped back, flipped bill hat, the black shirt, the tattoos, it all kind of joined in with that sock check. Yeah. Well, that's a little bit more lowrider fools and stuff like that. But
still, yeah.
no, it
But
was bringing in.
Some of those guys would. Some of those guys would kind of take on that cholo lifestyle. That would, they'd wear long cuff dickies. They'd wear, that was kind of the wino.
It was bringing
shoes,
in a little bit of, part of the lifestyle kind of became part of it with the shows, the truck runs, the music you would listen to, the different things that would go on. You went from tweed in the 90s to vinyl, fiberglass, and troll hair headliners.
I forgot about troll hair.
So as I said, some stuff went a little weird, and kind of crazy. Zebra print.
Yeah.
And that's, you just, like I said, it was getting attention. You were trying new things.
And that a lot came from the action sports guys too, because you got to figure like Crusty Demons of Dirt came out then, and
and that's like I said, that's kind of the bro
Pimps and Hoes, that kind of stuff. That was all like the parties that people were doing. So that was the lifestyle.
That was at that time, and that's you had clubs and shows like Freaks of Nature and Freak Fest, and kind of going all out there, and a lot of the under construction stuff. But you had a lot of clubs too that had started in the 90s that really started to explode.
Oh yeah.
Across the world, across the country, in the 2000s, you're talking, hundreds of members and chapters everywhere with like, Severed Ties, Negative Camber, No Regrets, Relaxed Atmosphere, Acrophobia. Like the clubs became part of that whole part of the lifestyle of it,
Right.
And it became too of, okay, well, who can top, same thing as it was in the 80s and 90s with mini trucks. It was who can top this guy, who was first. Right. So, okay, who had the first body drop? All right. Well, then who was the first to body drop this truck on this size wheel? Right. So like, okay, an S10 on 20, body dropped on 22s, or a Nissan on body dropped on 22s. Right. I know there's some experience with that, with the DIB guys out in Louisiana. Oh yeah. Duck, and you had Jamie Jordan was part of that. And, they had their, the green Nissan hardbody that was, really kind of stood out, at the time in like probably 2005. And that, was body dropped on 22s, which was, deal. It had 4x4 fenders and stuff, but it was like, how could you fit that wheel under there? Right.
Right. Well, and the answer was notching the firewall. But
and there was some other things too that they did.
Yeah. But most importantly, just how they actually put the wheels on the car.
Yeah. How did they do that?
All right. Funny story. I was building Pepe.
Yeah.
For
the blue and white Nissan.
The blue and white Nissan. For the 2006 SEMA show. For the Linex booth. Yeah. Was where I was going. And of course, I wanted to put a big wheel on it and wanted to turn it over to a Toyota lug pattern. So of course,
5 lug.
Yeah, it was, I wanted to change from the 6 lug to 5 lug. So going with Toyota rotors made total sense, and I just figured it was a bearing change. I looked at it, like got out some calipers, started measuring some stuff up. Travis Nowak actually came over to my shop, and he goes, "You know what? I know a guy that just put 22s on a Nissan. Let me give him a call." So of course I get on the phone, and we got Duck on the phone and started kind of talking, telling what we're doing. And I said, "So how'd you get those wheels? How'd you get the rotor to sit on there?" And he goes, "Oh man, just grind the castle nut. You'll be fine." And I'm like, "What?" And he goes, just go ahead, grind the nut. You'll be okay. Yeah. And I go, "So
grind it down to like,
Well, no. And he mentioned to grind it past the drilled spindle. So I couldn't put even a cotter pin in it. And I went, "Well, Duck, what happens if like you don't put a cotter pin?" He goes, "It's all right. We already lost the wheel the other day on the Nissan. It's fine." So I mean,
and that's,
there's a lot of run with scissors in the mini truck world.
Well, and what's funny too, and I remember it being talked about and joked about on like Street Source, which that was, a lot of people were this is before social media. People were coming together on Street Source mag online. Yes. In the chat room, message board. And,
well, you know a thing about that, don't you?
Yeah, exactly. And, and what was funny is like on the cover shot, they're missing a lug nut. Yeah. And then I think there was another truck that was on the cover missing a lug nut. Yeah. Right. And so like, it became joked about and stuff like that. But, there was guys doing, just kind of crazy stuff of how much can you fit under this, or you can do under this. And it was also too, like trying to be maybe unique. Yes. Maybe it was the truck that you were building wasn't, a S10 or a Toyota.
Right.
You know, it was a Nissan, or, you know, like guys like Ernie Macias, you know, he started No Regrets, and, you know, eventually was one of the editors of Mini Truckin magazine.
Correct.
And he was a Mitsu guy.
Right.
You know, he had Mitsubishi Mighty Maxes.
Yes.
You know, and he was a little bit of the lowrider influence still. He did a tilt bed.
Right.
You know, on the Mitsubishi, and he had several, you know, throughout the years that he did and he worked on. So,
Right.
You know, also too, like, you know, we talk about the old 70s, you know, mini trucks.
Right.
That were maybe van inspired. Okay, well, guys were maybe starting to pick some of those up and do the current style.
Right.
You know, I remember like 2005 or 6, you know, Go Easy, they had their Datsun.
Yeah.
That was, you know, basically body dropped full frame on, I think probably 20s and 22s.
Yeah.
Which, yeah, you're going to get a 70s Datsun truck on that big of a wheel. 60s Datsun truck.
60s Datsun truck. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and that was because probably, he probably bought it for
Nothing.
$200.
Right. Right.
You know?
Yeah. Because the other thing too is if you ever see one of these small little Datsun trucks, they're about the size of, I can't even say a Honda Civic. I think a Honda Civic's even bigger than them.
They're
they're very small,
Yeah.
right? So, and of course they were imported, so there wasn't a lot of them. So it was unique. And Art too. So let's talk about Art for a minute, because Art actually, his kind of claim to fame, or where he got noticed,
he got started from MIC.
MIC,
Yeah,
right.
he was one of the guys, you know, in the back doing the fabrication.
Right.
He had a little bit of a lowrider, you know, past as
Absolutely.
well. Same with, you know, a lot of those guys.
Yeah.
And then he MIC, you know, got
They sold. Yeah.
got
Rob sold. Right.
And then so Art went on his own, started up Go Easy Customs.
Yes.
And what was really cool too is you know, he had, you know, his guys, you know, Jeremy Kaufman and Scott, that were in the back, you know, working on the fabrication, and then he started to bring up kind of the younger generation.
Casey.
You know, Casey, Rich, Chris, you know, Baywatch, or Josh as we call him. Yeah.
Right.
But he really started to kind of mentor a lot of the younger guys that were either in high school or just out of high school, that were kind of your bro guys, your drag and destroy, your, you know, this and that. But like, he kind of helped them get their start, you know, and teach them a lot of things. I remember, you know, our friend Rich Oropeza, he owns Color Tech Graphics, so he does screen printing and stuff like that. And he was doing I remember, I think Art saying to him, you've got to, you can't body drop or work on another customer's cars until you do your truck.
Right.
So he had a Toyota that basically is like, okay, you body drop your Toyota and then you can work on customers' stuff. So like, learn and mess up on yours. And then you can work on, you know, a customer. And that's, you know, trial by fire, and just get into it. And that's what a lot of that was back in that day.
Well, I loved also that time, you know, I mean, Sean Mahaney is another one that's was never afraid to pick up a Sawzall.
Yeah.
Right. And I can hear him right now even saying, well, I can always weld it back together.
Yeah.
And that was
It's metal.
It's
You can
metal. I
always
can
put
always
it
weld it
back.
back together.
Yeah.
You know, and obviously Sean went on to do, you know, a ton of stuff with West Coast Customs. You know, that's probably,
And he had his own stuff that he would do. And
right.
there was a lot. And that's, you know, we're talking about the under construction stuff. There was several vehicles that started to kind of really, they've never been finished.
Right.
Or were they? You know, it's like, okay, well, was that state that it was in with bare metal, you know, tailgate or primer on one side and showing the fabrication,
right,
considered done?
Right.
You know, you have Marlin's Nissan Frontier that had, you know, full hydraulics, you know, in the bed, the, you know, back part of the bed, and that was all, you know, grinded down to bare metal.
Right.
And then he had scallops along the side, and, you know, it was on the cover of a magazine and got a lot of attention, but it was technically always under construction.
And what really kind of gave the nod for me to Marlin is when he built that truck was only maybe 4 or 5 years old.
Yeah.
You know, like guys,
it was a Nissan Frontier. It wasn't a hard body.
It wasn't a hard body.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that a lot of guys kind of miss that, because the way that he chose to go with the red oxide primer, the way that he chose to do like the engine turn tailgate, the way that he chose, like he's taken older hot rod
and
cues.
That's a lot of that at that time was the
whole kind of
rockabilly, the rockabilly throwback hot rod stuff was getting popular in the mid 2000s.
Right.
And so you saw that, and you also saw it with maybe the dash on an S10 would be a 59 Impala dash swapped in there.
My Nissan had a 55 GMC truck dash in it, right? Casey's S10 had a
61, I think,
Coupe de Ville
Cadillac front end.
grafted onto an S10, right?
Yeah, section down the front,
right.
Bumper and all that.
Tom McWeeney's unibody that had Larry Watson style inspired scallops on it. You know?
Yeah, triple X sled. I mean, that was a huge deal, and that was a unibodied, truck was pretty innovative for that time. I mean, you're talking about you're body dropping it, but now you're also filling in, welding the bed to the cab. Jeremy Coffin was a big part of that. He did that. He did, some full sizes with a unibody and stuff, but it took some balls to weld a bed that's supposed to flex independently of the cab, to it. And, with Tom's truck with, triple X sled, you guys also did a color match, bed liner. It had, we talk about the bridge, it had triple X,
in the
welded
bridge
as part of the bridge.
Yeah. Out of tubing.
Yeah. Out of tubing. And obviously you did, there's airbrush, adult film stars, actresses, across it, and that's entertainers, yes. And that's also too on the interior of his truck, and what was very popular at the time was smoothing and fiberglassing the door panels.
Obviously, yes.
Painting those to match the outside. Maybe you're putting the graphics, coming into that.
Through, right.
The audio, obviously, we talked about the huge, beds and cabs with huge subwoofers and stuff like that. Some of that was still popular, but being done more in, you had a fiberglass enclosure in the extended cab part that was all painted to match, and then, you'd reverse mount the speakers, the subwoofers, so that you'd show off the magnet.
Right.
And so there was obviously companies, Audioban or MA Audio that started to, put some more design into that, obviously the chrome with the flames from Audioban, where then you're showing off the magnet, showing off the back of the subwoofer.
Well, at that time too, and kind of going back to the what was old is now new, even Tom's S10 had a lot of, he had a 54 Chevrolet front crest. He had a Bel Air steering wheel. Some of the guys, the paint jobs, they would do full
flame.
Yeah. Front to back flame, something that you could see.
Frankenstein.
Oh my God.
Brian Hale's
S10. Yes.
And that,
the big circus kind of paint jobs. That was another, look at me, I'm loud. Right.
Well, and flames were very popular because we talk about like the 90s kind of, Air Concept, Air Syndicate, Craig Frazier, the scribble graphics, or you're intertwining, some tribal with some flames, with some splash, with, you're putting 3 different paint jobs or paint schemes all intertwined in one, and that became the mini truck style graphics. But the flames and the retro stuff in the 2000s was really popular because, also you look at, there's a truck called Plain Jane, which was P51 Mustang graphics. So that's what hot rod guys were doing. Put it onto, a mini truck. And, it was cool too on that. He had like the exhaust cut out on the side
that looked like a plane.
Like what you'd see on the World War II plane. And then obviously the pinup stuff and the stuff like that. And so the graphics really became, kind of a little bit different. And I think we started to see obviously the heavy fabrication and the under construction. Well, that also kind of started to lead the way of high quality, mini trucks.
Yes.
Whereas, we've had that throughout the years, and then you're getting a lot of your primered under construction stuff, but the heavy fabrication guys started then to finally finish them.
Right.
And fully
make
build
them
them.
functional.
And and a lot of it was bringing in maybe some street rod influence.
Well, think of, Bobby Martin comes up to mind for me from Sadistic with his Toyota. Now, the thing about him is Bobby worked at a Toyota dealership for many, many years. So he was very familiar with these trucks inside and out because he was obviously a technician. Yeah. So for him to take apart, like, let's say his Tacoma, back in, I want to say 2005 or 6 around that time, for him to body drop a brand new Tacoma was like, dude,
that would have been, probably 2006 or 2007.
Yeah, right? Okay. But that to me, I'm just like, I remember when that came out because I brought my Nissan that year, and it was like, how did he do that? That's a brand new truck.
Yeah.
Well, it's because he knew so much about it already.
And the same year, Extensive, brought out a brand new Tacoma that was fully body dropped. And, I think Rocky, he always had like Toyotas, and they were always new and body dropped.
Right.
Like, that was kind of his style that got set, and it had a full paint job on it. It was a fully done Tacoma that was brand new.
Right.
and they had probably done it in like a month.
Well, okay. Kurt over at AutoCore.
Yeah.
When the Colorado came out, and of course, again, like you mentioned, everybody had an S10, and the Colorado was kind of the.
It was brand new.
It was brand
you know,
new.
maybe a year old.
Right.
Yeah.
And people, they weren't sure about him yet. But Kurt came out and said,
Yeah.
boom, what about this?
I'm gonna shave everything on it, do a custom paint job, full fiberglass interior, and then, you know, removable bed
Right.
with just crazy, you know, suspension work on it. You know, and there's also some other trucks too that really had like all the ingredients that kind of started, and that's what we kind of started to see is trucks that had all of the ingredients of full fabrication, full paint, interior custom,
sounds,
chassis,
yeah,
you know, even engine upgrades or swaps maybe, but you know, you had, you know, a couple trucks that really were early on setting that, and like Chris Call's Tacoma,
yes,
you know, that was full flame job, full interior,
right.
You had Tulo Joe, his Toyota, you know, from Central Cal, Joe Millionaire, you know, is kind of the moniker of that, where it was suicide doors, full, you know, audio in the shell,
right.
you know, flames on it, body drop, just super clean. And we've really started to see those become, you know, the fully done mini trucks that had everything touched, as almost as good a quality as any street rod out there,
right?
Really kind of start to pop up.
And you mentioned the street rod quality, and I think that we need to kind of, you know, let's talk about that for a minute, because there are a lot of super talented guys that were working for other companies, building other things, that would then turn around and stop their day job and go work on their mini truck.
In their garage at night on the weekends.
I mean,
they were doing their.
I'm bringing up. First guys that come to my mind are like, again, Alex Anderson and Ricky Bobby James over there at Outlaw Motorsports. That, you know, obviously they added on a few other guys, called their place the Shop. Obviously, you know, we're talking like Kevin Coonsey was in on that deal.
Yeah, Ghetto Bob.
Ghetto Bob was on that deal.
Ryan, he was probably at least their painter. Ryan,
Chaotic. Yeah, from Chaotic. Yeah. So I mean, that was kind of like, you know, the deal that's going on there. I mean, obviously we've brought up Extensive as well, but you know, there's some of the other builders that are out there that were doing full $100,000 builds at the time, when $100,000 was a lot of money. Yeah, on a mini truck. You know, Eric Sabia from Little Shop of Horrors, not Little Shop Manufacturing.
Yeah, at the time, Little Shop of Horrors.
Yeah,
I mean, and that's, you know, you look at that time was basically when, you know, the mini truck kind of elevated itself back. You know, like I said, there was always some high quality ones, but it really now had its own style and its own, you know, certain things that were done and starting to become done at, you know, real high quality of workmanship. So I think with the next episode, I mean, you know, we've been doing 2 episodes of this. We're going to be doing a couple more.
Yeah.
Just because this is something that we kind of see needs to be told, because a lot of people outside of the mini truck world don't necessarily know the contribution that mini truck and mini truckers have made to the whole industry and still do. So
I think people would be surprised to know how many people that really run this industry right now started out as mini
and luckily
truckers.
I think people are starting to admit that.
Yeah.
So I think next one we're going to get into kind of these higher level builds. Some of I'd say the years where maybe the guys kind of started to go away from mini trucks, and then its recent resurgence.
Yeah.
So that'll be the next one.
Absolutely.